So for me, when I'm feeling stressed, I definitely find that it's much harder to communicate with people.
Yeah.
So I'll be isolating myself, not being able to communicate properly with my husband or with my friends. I'm a teacher, and teaching's extremely stressful anyway. So when I was starting to feel those extra levels of stress, I would find it much harder to be able to do my job. Yeah, so generally communication would be a lot more difficult. So I find it difficult to say how I was feeling, and maybe crying more easily, or getting angry, just feeling much stronger emotions. But not able to explain why. So then other people can't understand that. So yeah, it would cause arguments. It would cause disruption to relationships.
Yeah, and that's actually what I hear commonly as a GP at the start of all of this. And so it's interesting to hear that. If you take your mind back to it, can you remember any physical sensations that you had at that point?
Yeah, so during my third pregnancy, I know when my anxiety and stress was really high, I was having palpitations. I ended up having to have a heart monitor on because they were a bit worried about what level of palpitations I was experiencing. I'd feel very sweaty, just very anxious. I'd find it hard to keep my mind on the right subjects and not be able to concentrate.
Yeah, and again, those are very common things that we hear from when people feel stressed, and this is kind of when the stress goes on, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's not relieved, and you're kind of here a lot of the time with that hand model. So can you just how did you actually help us all understand how you actually accessed the support? Did somebody suggest that talking therapies, for instance, might be helpful, or how did it happen that you accessed the support?
I was really fortunate that in my second pregnancy, around 16 weeks, when I started to feel some stress and anxiety, my community midwife picked up on it really quickly. She made a referral for me to a specialist midwife who I was able to talk to about how I was feeling, and she then referred me to Talking Therapies. So although it is possible to self-refer or to be referred via your GP, for me it was done through the midwife. But there's lots of different ways of being referred to Talking Therapies. So I felt it was really important to be able to share a bit of my experience, because mental health issues bring so much stigma and shame anyway, and with maternal mental health there's the added element of fear about what's going to happen to you and your child. And I feel like people think that they should be really joyful and happy when they've just had a baby, and sometimes that isn't the case.
I guess also I'd like to add, that we need to get to a point where it's okay for the dads to ask for help, or the partners, or the other adult caregiver, because I think sometimes that's really missed. And there's no reason, a dad can get depressed or find it difficult with a very young baby just as much as the mum, in fact, really. It's slightly different because they haven't actually had the birth, obviously, but still it can be very hard sometimes. And I think, again, we need to take the stigma away from that, don't we? So that it can become okay and normal for a man to access talking therapies or other support at that point.
I want people to understand that it is okay to ask for help, and not to be afraid of the consequences, because there is help out there. Whether it be more structured help, or whether it's the peer support kind of help that I found through mental health swims. So while I was on the mother and baby unit, one of the specialist doctors there told us that she'd been swimming in the sea, and it just rang a bell to me of something that I'd like to try. I'd heard before about how it was beneficial for mental health, but I'd never really tried doing it when the water's really cold. I'd obviously swum in the sea as a child and even as an adult, but not when it was really cold. But the doctor put me in touch with a friend of hers who was a host of a group in Lyme Regis. And then when I was discharged from the unit, I went along, and this was in February of 2021. And the water was at its absolute coldest.
Freezing.
It was around 7 degrees. So the idea is that you go and have a dip. It's not so much swimming. It's called Mental Health Swims, the organisation, but it's more about dipping in cold water. So it's about community, not competition.
Yes.
And about
And
dips, not distance. So
and kind of that deep mindful experience, isn't it? That's,
yeah.
It's a bit like the heavy weighted blankets and things we sometimes use as part of sensory integration.
Yeah.
It's kind of just helps those neural circuits all calm down. It's another way of bringing the lid down. It's a wonderful
incredible
thing to do. Yeah.
The way you feel completely connected and alive when you're in that cold water.
Yeah.
And you can go in with a wetsuit on, or you can wear whatever you want in the water.
And I love that description of you going in with your bikini and then gloves and a bubble hat. Yeah, that's really.
So mental health swims has been a huge part of continuing my recovery.
Yes.
So I needed a period of time in the mother and baby unit just to stabilise me and to help me see how I can continue with life, and then being able to go in the water and have that peer support as well. And I'm now a host for the Lyme Regis group too. I co-host it, and all of those things have just really empowered me.
Yes, and it is wonderful, and it fits so well with the science as well, because you've discovered a way that you can bring your lid down and that you can access yourself without needing to have a professional around. You can choose to go and join in with that community, and all of you together are supporting each other, aren't you? Which is just really lovely on the one hand, but also it fits with how we are as humans. We like to be in groups. We like to feel as if we belong, and that sense of belonging that you described there, along with the deep mindful exercise of going in the waters, bringing your lid down, isn't it? And what we know from the science is that as parents, the more we can bring our lids down and sit, if you like, or flow in our river of well-being, the more our children are likely to be able to do that.
So for me, being part of Mental Health Swims was really important as helping with my recovery, but obviously it's just one example of lots of different ways that we can access what you called your river of well-being.
Yeah.
For example, in the mother and baby unit, we did lots of creative activities and we did some gardening and things like that.
Yeah.
And some of those activities other people have found really, really helpful too.